Okay, so today we are diving into one of the most, well, let's just say dangerous books ever written, Jean-Jacques Rousseau's The Social Contract. Back in 1762, this book basically lit a fire under the thrones of kings everywhere by asking a really radical question. What if the rules that govern us are the actual problem? And you know what? That question is just as relevant today as it was then.
So let's start with Rousseau's absolute bombshell of an opening line. It's just one sentence, but it captures this huge, mind-bending contradiction. Just think about it for a second. If we're all born free, then why is it that everywhere we look, we're tangled up in rules and hierarchies and laws? What went so wrong?
Now you have to try and picture the world Rousseau was living in. You had kings ruling by divine right, which basically means they claimed their power came straight from God. Your place in society, it was fixed the moment you were born. So to even suggest that this whole system wasn't natural, that it was in fact a kind of prison, was a massive act of intellectual rebellion.
So how exactly did we end up here? To really get Rousseau's radical solution, we first have to understand his diagnosis of the problem. And it all goes back to his idea of what humanity was like in the very beginning.
You see, other philosophers like Thomas Hobbes, they imagined early humans as these brutish, selfish creatures, constantly at war with each other. Rousseau, he completely disagreed. He pictured a state of nature where we were actually peaceful, maybe even compassionate. We were guided by simple needs, not greed. For him, real freedom was being totally self-sufficient.
So where did it all go wrong? Well, Rousseau points to a single catastrophic moment. The very first person who drew a line in the sand, pointed and said, this is mine. He argued that simple act was the birth of private property. And right on its heels came jealousy, conflict, and inequality. That was the start of civilization. And for Rousseau, that was the exact moment we started forging our own chains.
All right, so if civilization is the disease, then what's the cure? I mean, we can't just go back to living in the woods, right? Rousseau's solution was both brilliant and totally out there. Don't try to break the chains. Instead, we take control of them and reforge them together on our own terms.
And this right here is the heart of Rousseau's whole vision. A real social contract isn't some deal you make with a king to keep you safe. No way. It's a promise that citizens make to each other. They willingly agree to form a single community to get a higher, more meaningful kind of freedom.
And here is what makes this idea so revolutionary. Other thinkers had basically said that to get security, you had to hand over your freedom to some powerful ruler. Rousseau's response to that? Absolutely not.
And here's the genius of it. You don't surrender your rights to some king far away. You pool them. You put them together with everyone else in the community. You're basically trading that lonely, natural freedom of just one person for the powerful, shared freedom of being part of a society that governs itself.
This quote really captures that commitment. You stop being just this isolated person, and you become an inseparable part of a collective body, a whole. Your own personal desires get submitted to something bigger, what Rousseau called the general will.
But what is this general will? It sounds a little vague, right? Well, this concept is basically the engine that drives Rousseau's entire political philosophy. So let's break it down. Okay, here's the most important distinction. The general will isn't just what most people want. It's not a popularity contest or a majority vote. Think of it like a sports team trying to figure out a game-winning strategy. It's not about what's best for the star player, it's about the single best plan for the entire team to win. That's the general will. It's always aimed at the good of the whole community.
And this brings us to Rousseau's most famous and maybe most confusing phrase, being forced to be free. I know. How can that possibly make sense? Well, for Rousseau, true freedom isn't just doing whatever you feel like at any given moment. Real freedom is living by rules that you yourself helped create. So when the community makes a law for the common good, obeying that law isn't losing freedom, it's actively participating in your own self-governance.
So here's kind of how it works in practice. First, individuals have to come together as a community. Then, they talk, they debate, and this is key, not about what's good for them personally, but what's good for everyone. Out of that collective reasoning, the general will emerges. And then finally, that will gets turned into law, which everyone, as a member of that community, agrees to follow.
So, as you can probably guess, ideas this radical didn't just sit on a bookshelf.
They helped set the world on fire. They inspired revolutions. But they also sparked some really intense criticism that we're still debating today.
The impact was just world-changing. This core idea that real political power has to come from the consent of the people, what we call popular sovereignty, that became the rallying cry for both the American and French revolutions. It's really the intellectual foundation for modern democracy as we know it.
This table really drives home just how radical Rousseau was. I mean, while Hobbes's social contract was all about a desperate plea for security and Locke's was about protecting private property, Rousseau was aiming for something way more ambitious, a society built on genuine freedom and collective self-rule.
But, and this is a big but, there's a potential dark side here. Critics for a long time have argued that a tyrant could easily just claim they embody the general will as a way to crush anyone who disagrees. That very phrase, forcing people to be free, has been seen by some as a blueprint for totalitarianism. And, just practically speaking, how can millions of people all debate every single law together?
In the end, though, it all comes back to this one powerful idea. For Rousseau, this was the bottom line. This was non-negotiable for any legitimate society. The people who have to live under the laws ought to be the ones who write them. Power, ultimately, has to rest with the people.
And so, Rousseau's 250-year-old challenge lands right at our feet today. In your own life, in your own society, who is the author of the laws? Is it you and the people around you? Or is it someone else? It's a question that gets right to the very heart of what it means to be free.